and stuff. Our next discussion item, Mr. Barbieri.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Shaw. I'm sure Mrs. Brill is aware of this one because she's taking the heat, no pun intended, also with respect to the students from her district that attend Olympic Heights High School. But I just wanted to make the board aware of a situation and ask for some discussion on how we rectify it. As all of you know, there's 180 days in a school year. That's 36 weeks of school. Over a five-year period, there's 180 weeks in a five-year period of school. There were 210 Tririga work orders for the Olympic Heights air conditioning system, which is more than one per week, every week for the last 5 years. That's the average. That does not include the emergency calls that went into the central administration to get emergency help down there, because those aren't work orders. They're not logged into Tririga, my understanding. So we can expect that there's somewhere well in excess of 210 times that the air conditioning system at Olympic Heights High School was failing in some regard and had to have some work done on it. Last week it was out 2 times. The air conditioning was down at that school. On Thursday, over 40 children went to the clinic complaining of heat-related illness feelings and went home. And I understand on Friday from the parent calls that a lot of parents didn't send their kids to school until the AC system, they could be assured that the AC system was working. Last week, the teachers opened windows to allow the warm air from outside to come into the classrooms, because even though it was 90 degrees outside, that was cooler air than what they were experiencing in the classroom. Some of the teachers actually took their classes down to the courtyard outside in order to have cooler temperatures than in the school building. Under the penny sales tax, if you look at the list, the AC system at Olympic Heights is not scheduled to be replaced until the years 2022 to 2024, which is 4 years from now. There's no way that this district should put those students and those teachers through having to work in a school that has constant air conditioning problems. So I'd like the board to discuss moving that up on the sales tax list so that we get immediate attention to that school, so that we don't fix it. Every time it's a call that the switch is, tripped because of the overload from FP&L. Supposedly they took care of that 2 years ago. It's happening again. It burns out the switch. We have to get a new switch installed. The system goes down. After it's repaired, it takes hours to recool down the school. In the meantime, we have children in the school that can't concentrate. So I wanted to bring it to the board's attention. I don't know if you have those issues in other schools, but I'm sure Mrs. Brill and I have been putting up with a lot of complaints from the parents and teachers and students at Olympic Heights, and something needs to be done rather than, I know the district's doing everything it can to repair these, and I understand there's not enough technicians to get out to all the schools, and maybe we need to hire an outside repair company to come in and fix these things on an emergency basis. But I'm at my wit's end with how to deal with this situation at Olympic Heights. It's over 2,000 students, and I need some of your discussion to see how we fix this. Thank you.
Mrs. Brill?
Thank you. And so obviously I completely agree that we should move it up. I don't know, for whatever reason, I didn't get any phone calls. The only thing that I did have, and I do want to commend the school, one of my neighbors when I was outside told me, did you hear that the AC was out? Her son has a heart condition, and so she called the nurse and they made sure to have Gatorade for him so that he'd be all right. But I completely agree. I just think that the parents in my district are just so grateful that their kids go to Olympic Heights. They don't want to say anything about it to me, but I do know it's been a recurring problem. I do think that in this particular instance, we need to bump it up, and if other instances in other schools where, especially when it affects children's health and their ability to learn, and also the staff, having to work under those conditions. So anything that we're able to do, I would completely support.
Mrs. Andrews?
Thank you, Mr. Barbieri and Mrs. Brill. I thoroughly support it. I was walking the school at Pahokee High School on last Friday, and the children and the school, the air conditioning went out. They were trying to get to lunch. Luckily, the region superintendent was there. The maintenance people had been there an hour before they could get back to the West Area office. The thing had conked out. I don't know if this is going on everywhere. I just really want to know. I just happened to be there that day, and everybody was in a panic to get somebody out there to fix the air conditioning system for that school. So we really need to prioritize, and we need to have I want to know what's going on with these schools and the air conditioning pieces of the puzzle. I think it's just a piecemeal, seems like it. If it's breaking down every time you look around, that's not going to work. We need to get it repaired.
Mrs. Whitfield?
May I ask if we can have response from staff on this? I would really like to hear. Thank you.
Dr. Fenoy?
Yes, Ms. Paul will come up and discuss our plans moving forward.
Good afternoon. So to address the Olympic Heights issue, I've spoken with Mr. Barbieri previously. What we see, and let me be clear in terms of the events at Olympic Heights, 1991, they had an old chiller. It was replaced in 2005. This type of chiller is 2005. This type of chiller is expected to last 30 years. So this chiller, the two chillers and the smaller chiller there, they're not within half of their life cycle. So what I've asked our facilities director, Stacy Marshall, who's here, to kind of look at when the chillers went down and what were the circumstances. One of the things she found was that when the chillers went down, there was a voltage drop on the FP&L side, so the voltage coming into the system dropped. I am not assured that if we were to replace these chillers with new chillers, that we wouldn't have the same situation. So what we have now is we're working with FP&L to put a more sensitive monitor on that. We've had instances, and I haven't been here that long, but I understand in the past we've had instances where FP&L had to go out and replace an entire transformer. And so I think it would be prudent for us to do the research to find out exactly why the chillers are tripping. Every time there's a power surge or power goes out, it requires someone to come physically on site to start the chillers back up. In addition, you have several different types of chillers at a school. So the ones that are at the high school are the big, massive office building type chillers. They have systems in place to shut them down if there's an electrical issue. And so, again, it requires someone to manually come out and start it back up and make sure that it's safe as it starts back up. So we still have some work to do on Olympic Heights to find out the root cause of why the chiller is tripping. But there should be an expectation when you have a power outage in your home and stuff that it takes a while to get the power back up. It's kind of the same thing with our chillers. It takes us some time to get it back up. One thing I would say with the principals, with our principals, is that they have been really great in communicating with us when these events happen, so that we can have someone out there to make sure that the school is okay. It's unfortunate, and we all regret what happened in terms of Olympic Heights, because it's very uncomfortable for our kids and our staff to be in that kind of situation. But I think it would be prudent and fiscally responsible to do the research to find out exactly what's causing the chiller to shut down at that particular school.
Mrs. Andrews, and then Mrs. Whitfield.
Thank you. Just to follow up with the Pahokee issue, Dr. Avosa can attest to it. We had graduation one year and no air. This past year, I had my fingers crossed that the air conditioning system would be working. I need you to go and do some follow-up with Pahokee High School. Something's wrong out there. Every time I go, there's something wrong with mold. The air conditioning, the whole system out there needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Mrs. Whitfield.
I just wanted to follow up on one of the comments you made about how this is tied in with the FPL issue. Is this occurring at other schools then as well when there's a power surge?
Yes, yes, and also when there is a power outage. So we see this when we have extensive rain, a power is out in a region, and it just depends on what grid the school happens to be on, whether the school is impacted. It's no different than at your home.
I just wanted to say one quick thing just to continue to follow up on what Mrs. Brill said about the health concerns. Obviously, that is the most important, and I do feel for Mr. Barbieri having to receive calls from parents having those health concerns. We have to prioritize if we have children in a school. That can be very uncomfortable if the AC goes out and we just built these buildings so you can never have air really come through them. But I do think we should stick to the natural process of allowing you to do your research on this. I would like to make sure that we are prioritizing, with
Absolutely.
health and safety being the number one priority for our students. But I would like to have you go through your normal process to find out what that is.
And I must say, we do have a very aggressive replacement plan for chillers that have outlived their useful life cycle. So I'll be happy to provide that to the board so you can kind of see what the schedule is. But when we have a series of events with a chiller that is not nearly half of its life cycle, then I think that requires us to be very prudent in terms of identifying the problem, because if we don't identify the root cause of the problem, we put brand new equipment, millions of dollars of equipment in and replace it, and then we end up in the same space. So I just want to make sure that we do our due diligence, and we have monitors that we're placing on the school with FPNL, more sensitive monitors, so we can see when those surges happen exactly what the pattern is, and then work with FPNL to get a solution to it.
Dr. Fenoy and then Mr. Barbieri.
Yes, Ms. Paul, could you also speak to some of your team's plans with providing maintenance agreements, having a hybrid approach due to the fact that we have not been able to fill so many HVAC positions, the realities of the aging workforce as it relates to people who can actually fix that, and then also your conversations with HR about doing an assessment of the salary schedule for those positions.
So, I think it takes a village with the HVAC situation across the state, not just within our district. And the reality is that our workforce is aging, and we have quite a few retirements that are coming up within the next 5 years. As of today, we have 8 vacancies in HVAC techs. So I'm exploring the possibility of doing a hybrid approach. We'll start with Olympic Heights, where we're working with one of our manufacturers to do an assessment of the Olympic Heights chillers and come back with us action plan for this. So in addition to having our in-staff personnel, our HVAC techs, we're looking at a hybrid approach of having a manufacturer or another company to partner with us to service our equipment as we go through these vacancies and so forth. And it is my intent also to work with our HR department to see what we can do in terms of making our salaries for HVAC techs more competitive. They can get $100,000 a year out on the market, as opposed to working for us for $30,000 and $40,000. So, one of the things we talked about too is just kind of partnering with Palm Beach State College to see, work with them, work with our students while they're in our schools to train them towards HVAC, and then when they go to State College, get their certifications and so forth, and then hopefully we can lure them in here to work for us. And our apprenticeship program is a real key to doing that as we go forward.
Mr. Barbieri.
Let Marcia go first.
Mrs.
Yes,
Andrews.
I just want you to look at West Tech.
Absolutely.
We've had HVAC training there for the last 5 years, graduating quite a few people. So if you could go through that list so that we can find those adults who've actually completed the training, I'd like for them to be working for the school district.
Absolutely. We
Mr.
would like that
Barbieri.
too.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Shaw. Mrs. Paul's been very responsive. She and I have been dealing with this for weeks now, so I appreciate the fact. But I just want to make sure that the board realizes, I heard one of you say, let's do it in the normal course of, there's been 210 work orders over 180 weeks. So, this is a critical issue for health and safety of those children in that school. It's not something that we just put off as a maintenance item in the future. I also want you to know that at the Audit Committee meeting last Thursday, I brought this issue to the attention of the Audit Committee. The Audit Committee has authorized the Inspector General to do an investigation as to whether or not there's a breach of warranty, whether the equipment was faulty when it was installed, so that come back to the board with a report as to whether or not there's been any problems with that AC system that wasn't the district's fault, or maybe was the district's fault. But in any event, replacing chillers that are not 30 years old with new chillers because they're failing, hopefully there's a warranty on those, and I'm asking legal to make sure when we buy new chillers and things like that, we figure out a way to either have these contractors bond this off, for the life of the equipment, or especially major purchases like chillers that cost us millions of dollars, or we get warranties that are enforceable, so we can require them to come and replace or fix or replace. So we don't go through this at other schools when we start replacing, because I looked at some of the other schools on the list, and there's other ones that are scheduled to get chillers and things like that, and there should be warranties, so we have somebody to go back on when after 15 years of chillers failing that had a 30-year life expectancy.
Mrs. Paul.
And that's one of and I appreciate you saying that, Mr. Barbieri. That's one of the things that we're doing is going forward to make sure that we purchase a substantive warranty to help us along the way with repairing the chillers and the competition in the market for qualified technicians for this. So we are definitely doing that. It's more expensive to do it, obviously, but we think as we go forward, it's the best course of action to follow.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments? All right, this is Dr. Robinson.
You know, like I'm having a flashback. It seemed that we learned this lesson before. So I don't know as well. I guess if IG is going to look at it, it seems that I thought our contracts were tighter than what it sounds like that they are. I mean, so it's two things. One, I'm glad that you are investigating the cause of the problem, and to whatever degree it's FP&L, we need to like have a meeting of the minds with FP&L, right? Because they have a lot of money. They need to fix some things as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, but the other thing is if it's truly a failure of the chiller, I thought that our contracts were already tight enough based on previous experience that if they were failing, it was their fault. That it's in there, we can go after the manufacturer to recoup the dollars. But having said that, let me get to the other point I want to make is that I do agree that we need to prioritize. If we need to reorder the chiller repairs, replacements based upon the number of times they've gone down, I think that we should do that. I mean,
And I think we have,
Okay.
In certain cases where we have complete failures. And so we have quite a bit of the sales tax money set aside for that. And those are the first ones up where they're just repeated failures or they've outlived their useful life cycle. So we've done that, but there's always an outlier in anything that you do. The warranties, one of the things, again, we're focused on, the warranty is only good for a certain period of time. And if the issue that causes the chiller to fail is a natural event, such as a power outage or storm or something like that, then that's not really a warranty issue. That's just us coming back out and making sure that we bring the equipment back up in a safe manner. And so we got to make sure that we're looking apples to apples.
So there are a couple of very complex things that Ms. Paul and her team need to research for the board. So we will bring that information back. We'll work with Julianne to look at some of the past warranty issues moving forward. And then I think the only thing that I will say to the board as we have these failures in some of the equipment and the schedule, remember the referendum dollars are stretched over 10 years. And so we have to be very, very mindful of when we move things up, what comes off. And so I just want you all to understand that. So that's part of this process. If something goes up, something comes off. And that's just a conversation that we'll have with the board moving forward.
Ms. Rico and then Mrs. Brill.
No, I wanted to respond to the discussion about the contracts and warranties and to ensure, it has not been brought to my attention that there was any failure of the warranties or inadequacies with the language. However, I've just assigned my staff to gather together all of the items, contracts that go with the items under discussion, and we'll do a very thorough review of the times, the dates, the language, and where we are with that so that we have assist with a comprehensive package in that regard.
Mrs. Brill.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I think we all understand that something's going to come off when we bump something up, and, there's an understanding that air conditioning is vital to have, especially when it's been as hot as it's been. But, I'm thinking about it, and I live on the same grid as Hagen Road Elementary. We lose our electric all the time. We were out for hours a few weeks ago, and we were Facebooking with the people out in the canyons that go down to Olympic Heights. Well, Hagen Road had air conditioning. So there's something wrong somewhere, whether it is the chiller or FPL, but we lose our electricity at least once a month where I live. And we're on the same grid. Now, I know it's a smaller chiller in the elementary school, but I do think that we need to get on top of this. I'm with Mr. Barbieri, not only because it's kids from my district go there, but it's just, I can't imagine being in that building without air conditioning, period. And I look forward to the updates.
Mr. Barbieri.
Yeah, I hate to beat a dead horse, but in 2016, FP&L discovered that they needed to do something at that school, and I was told that they came into that school and they replaced something so that these...
I believe that's the transformer.
Okay,
that
they were fixing something so that the constant interruptions to the chillers would stop, and obviously, whatever FP&L did two years ago didn't work. So, just keep that in mind if we're going to get FP&L out there. Remind them that they told us 2 years ago that they were fixing the problem, and it's not fixed. And I'm very aware of exactly what went on because I've been there at that school over and over again for the last 6 years dealing with this. So I know exactly what I'm talking about. So make sure that you get the complete story from FP&L when you meet with them because
Absolutely.
they did try and fix this once.
Dr. Robinson?
And my last point is also recruit from Riviera Beach Prep. Because, no, seriously, because I shook the hands of 150 people who completed the pre-apprenticeship program there in the construction trades. All were not HVAC, but all of them we need, right? So we should recruit from them as well.
And just so you know, we have $37 million scheduled for HVAC in FY19. So we've moved money forward to take care of a lot of the issues we have with it. And again, the referendum is over 10 years, and we're trying to focus on the priorities as you suggested. So again, I just want to be responsible in the sense that we find out what the real issue is at Olympic Heights and work accordingly. So I'll be keeping you informed on that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I have to make a comment. And, this discussion we have, and it's one that this board has had for years and years and years. And it's unfortunate that some of the needs that we have to take care of these projects have to be talked about on reordering projects and everything because we don't have the funding. A lot of these issues can be placed right straight back on the state legislature for what has happened to school districts over the last 10 or 15 years and the failure of the legislature to provide for capital outlay and maintenance needs. So with that, thank you very much, Mrs. Paul. Dr. Robinson.
So I just want to clarify. So when things get reordered, right, and to your point, if something is moved up, something's moved back, then that is presented to us as part of the capital plan update, correct? And it goes to the oversight committee.
Well, it's presented to ISOC, and they provide a recommendation to the board. I think that's how it works.
Okay, so I'm glad I mentioned it, because it does also come as part of the capital plan update. I mean, but it also should be highlighted. But I think that when the proposal for that change is going to be made, that the board needs to be alerted. We need to be told, this is moving up,
Absolutely.
This perfect example, this is moving up. The best way we see to get this done is to move this back a year, and here's your FYI, right?
Yeah, we work very closely with Leanne in Treasury as well as Mike Burke. So, we just don't move things around at will. There is a process we go through.
Right, which
And
must
the board
include
is
the board.
informed of that. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. That concludes our workshop items. So at this time,